It was printed in bold on the galactic. Accord records, human species. Biologically unremarkable. Technologically primitive. Psychologically unstable, low threat. Classification. That line right there sealed our fate. I remember the day Earth found out. The entire planet was watching when the broadcast came through, first contact. The shining moment of hope, the galactic. Union's emissaries arrived in orbit, not with gifts or greetings, but with shackles. They didn't come to uplift. They came to categorize and contain. I was 26, serving what I thought would be a meaningless tour in the orbital militia. My job was supposed to be pushing buttons and monitoring satellites. Instead, I watched the skies burn when they vaporized our defense stations in less than 2 minutes. Not as an act of war, they said, but protocol. Harmless species don't need weapons. They didn't even land on Earth. We weren't worth the fuel they sent. Drones, they took what they wanted. Resources, samples, people. God, they took people. My younger brother was one of them, dragged from our home in cold silence, tagged, scanned, and vanished into a transport beam. We never heard from him again. They called it a study. We called it what it was, an abduction. But what none of those aliens understood, what they couldn't quantify in their pristine little reports was this: humans don't stay down, you push us far enough, we stop breaking, we sharpen. They didn't monitor the fringes, the mining colonies, the backwater rock they dumped us on after declaring Earth under biosphere restoration protocols. They thought we'd die off. Instead, we built in the dark, in the dirt, in secret. I met men who lost more than family. I met one guy, Alexei, who saw his entire town erased by orbital fire because some idiot threw rock at a drone. There was nothing left, just glass and bones. He didn't cry. He forged weapons. Our species doesn't have claws or fangs. We bleed easy, but we know rage. We understand revenge like no other animal in this galaxy. We hijacked their tech, learned fast, too fast. They underestimated how well fear works as a motivator. When you have nothing to lose, even death starts looking like a good bargain if you can take a few of them with you. The first strike was a freighter, just a routine supply vessel for one of their science stations. We didn't even board it, just overloaded its antimatter drives and turned it into a sun. 3,000 of them gone in a flash. Their official response: an unfortunate accident. Idiots that gave us time. We recruited, trained, spread every forgotten human outpost, every slave camp, every exiled survivor. We built an underground army across 6 systems, all under the noses of a species that thought we were too stupid to organize, too emotional to unify, too weak to win. The irony: they were right about us once, but that was before they took our children, before they sterilized our women, before they labeled our rage as psychological instability. They made us monsters, not through power but through pity, and monsters don't ask for mercy. The first planet we took back wasn't even strategic, just symbolic. Research colony where they kept our kind, like lab rats, poking, slicing, injecting. We stormed it. No ships, no fancy weapons, just repurposed mining gear, rage, and desperation. It took 18 hours. When it was over, we sent the Galactic Council a message written in ash: Harmless, you were warned. They didn't reply, but the next day 3 of their border systems went dark. We didn't need fleets, we had humans. And they paid with planets they didn't take us seriously, even after the first colony fell, even after we broadcast a declaration using their own satellites. They still couldn't believe it was humans behind it. They blamed pirates. They said some fringe mercenary group must have got their hands on Union weapons their data models couldn't process the idea of humans acting with this much coordination, this much brutality, and this much intelligence. It didn't fit their profile of us, and that blind arrogance, it bought us time. Precious bleeding time, while they scrambled for diplomatic answers. We were preparing the next strike. I was stationed on Vorta 7 then, a moon station orbiting one of the core supply worlds, not big enough to matter, not small enough to ignore, but it was perfect. The aliens had turned the place into a transport hub, drones, cargo vessels, fuel depots, all monitored by lazy species who thought humans only existed to scrub floors or monitor humidity levels. I was there undercover, working sanitation. Name tag said Unit 434C. But the others called me Cade. They didn't know I understood every word they muttered while they strutted past me. Like gods, to them we were less than dogs. Dogs had emotion, loyalty. We were just byproducts of a dying world. They didn't check us for neural implants, didn't scan us for submol transmitters. Why would they? Harmless. That was the last mistake they made. The station had around 400 personnel, 3 species total, none of them human. Drones did most of the work, and they organics acted like board managers who spent most of their time playing tactical simulations or indulging weird, tasteless luxuries. The day of the assault, everything felt normal. I was on waste duty, pretending to scrub ion filters while patching coded pulses through the stations. Under grid, 14 humans worked on that moon, and every one of them was part of the plan. Every one of them had nothing left to lose. We didn't go in guns blazing. We flipped their gravity first, collapsed their entire control deck into a bloody mess of bones and splinters. Then we locked down oxygen control and let them feel what it was like to suffocate slowly, just like our people did in the outer domes after they cut off life support. For safety, some of them begged. We recorded it. We didn't send the whole footage to the Galactic Council, just enough to show their command how easily a harmless species could butcher professionals trained for planetary suppression. That wasn't war. That was message delivery, and that message rang loud. The next week, I was standing on the deck of the Subarus, our first true warship built in secret from the bones of old cargo hulks and smuggled components. We had engineers who used to design weapons for Earth's fallen nations. We had pilots trained in ancient simulators. We had nothing, but we were creating something they had no metric for. Human vengeance. The Council responded the way arrogant powers always do. Sanctions broadcast. They issued hollow threats, said they'd tighten regulations on human employment as if we were still their property. I watched our leader, Commander Holt, laugh so hard he dropped his sidearm. You don't sanction wolves while you're bleeding, he said. You pray they don't smell it. He was right. By the time their fleets mobilized, we weren't hiding anymore. We hit Arcani's Prime next, one of their crown jewels, a mid-tier capital with more military presence than all the outer colonies combined. Everyone thought we were crazy to go for We were supposed to keep picking off weak targets, not provoke the hammer. But we weren't picking fights anymore. We were starting a war. I led one of the boarding teams. My job was simple: infiltrate the orbital defense grid and open a hole big enough for the Subarus to fly straight through. They expected stealth. We gave them a frontal assault. Half my squad died before we even touched the metal. We breached the hull with nothing but a modified mining drill wrapped in explosives. When I hit the floor, my ears were ringing. My arm was numb from shrapnel, and one of their security drones was already lighting up the corridor in front of me. I didn't feel fear, not anymore. I remember stepping over my friend's body. Riggs, he took a plasma bolt to the chest. He was 19, born in a labor camp. Never even kissed a girl, but he died smiling because he knew we weren't going to be forgotten anymore. We cleared the station in 5 hours, 12 humans, 160 aliens. None survived. Arcana's prime didn't fall that day, but its people panicked. Evacuations began. The economy spiraled, and the Galactic Council couldn't explain how primitive humans had turned a core defense grid into a bonfire. They blamed terrorism, said we were radicalized. I laughed when I read the report. We weren't radicals, we were orphans, widowers, survivors. They turned us into this. What followed was chaos. The Union started pulling humans from high-risk areas. Ships stopped employing us. Camps were locked down. Surveillance doubled. Too late, the seeds were already planted. Every system they touched had humans in it. Broken ones, quiet ones, angry ones. They tried to isolate us, and in doing so, they connected us more than we ever were before. That's when Hall announced Operation Black Rain. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't diplomatic, it was retribution. Plain and raw. We were going to show them how fragile their peace really was. 12 colonies, one coordinated strike, not to conquer, to erase. We didn't want territory, we didn't want negotiations. We wanted them to look at their star maps and start drawing red X's over every world that used to feel untouchable. I was assigned to RE9, a peaceful trade world. No weapons, no defenses. Just a cultural gem, home to one of the Union's largest art archives. The irony wasn't lost on me. We didn't destroy the art, we destroyed the curators, left the buildings intact, left the paintings hanging in their halls, blood on the marble, silence in the galleries. The message was clear: you stole our future, we're taking your pride. The aftermath was brutal. They wanted to erase us, but they didn't understand what humans do when we're cornered. We don't die quietly, we go feral. The more they hunted us, the more vicious we became. What started as revenge became something else, a survival instinct wrapped in fury. Some called us terrorists, some called us demons. They forgot we were men once. I started having dreams, not about battles, not about blood, about my brother. I'd see his face in the transport beam, eyes wide, mouth moving but no sound, over and over. Then I'd wake up to the static hum of a ship's reactor and the smell of scorched metal. I wasn't a soldier. Before all this, I worked construction. Back on Earth, I had a dog, a girlfriend. I used to dream about saving enough to buy a patch of land in the Southern Highlands, somewhere quiet. Now the only peace I found was in the moment before pulling the trigger. We weren't just fighting back anymore. We were becoming something else. And they still didn't understand. They thought this was a phase, a blip of resistance that could be crushed with enough propaganda and military strength. They didn't see that the galaxy had changed. Their empires were built on predictability, on order, on classifications. But humans don't fit categories. We're chaos wrapped in skin. We don't bend to systems. We tear them apart when they fail us. The war stopped being about humans versus aliens. It became humans versus the very idea of control. And the more they tried to label us, the more planets they lost. By the time the Third Council fleet was deployed, 7 worlds were already gone, not just damaged. Gone, evacuated, glassed, or turned into uninhabitable ruins. We didn't even take trophies, just left messages carved into rock or metal. We were harmless. You made us hunters. They started calling us ghosts, not humans, not rebels, ghosts. Some propaganda broadcasts tried to humanize us again. Misguided earthlings, they'd say, victims of trauma, a tragic species caught in grief. But the soldiers and system architects, the ones who had watched entire outposts vanish in a day, knew better. They didn't see grief anymore. They saw precision, hate with discipline, fury wrapped in silence. We weren't screaming when we attacked. We were quiet, always quiet. That's what scared them the most. I hadn't spoken to Commander Holt in weeks. After Operation Black Rain, we scattered across sectors. High Command went fully decentralized. No more fleet meetings, no more communicates unless absolutely necessary. That way, if one of us was captured, we couldn't give them names or locations, but they didn't capture many of us, not alive anyway. I led a new team by then. No one from my original unit had survived 9. It weighed on me. I wasn't some hardened veteran. Not really. I was just the one who kept making it to the other side of the fire, dragging scars and ghosts with me. My second in command was a kid named Bran. Looked 15, acted 40, his voice barely cracked, but he could gut a security drone with a makeshift blade in 5 seconds flat. I never asked about his past. He never offered it. We understood each other. That was enough. We were orbiting a cold rock called Illuze 3, waiting for a target ship to pass through the system, a data vessel carrying Union fleet movement logs. 1 capture could save 1,000 of our lives. That was the math we worked with. Now trade 10 of us to save 100, 100 to save 1,000. Fair odds in hell. The data ship didn't arrive on time. Instead, we intercepted a distress signal. Normally, we'd ignore it. Could have been a trap, could have been a patrol, could have been bait set by their intelligence divisions. But something in the message made me pause. It wasn't in their language. It was in English, only 3 words. They're taking children. Bran looked at me from across the console. His expression didn't change, but his fingers twitched. A tell same as mine. I opened the signal, ran it through old ciphers. Nothing official, just a looped transmission coming from one of the colonies we thought had already been evacuated. Lura Station. Population unknown. Status abandoned 3 months ago due to biocontamination. Standard procedure for the Union. When a colony got too rebellious or inconvenient, they'd blame some fictional pathogen, throw a quarantine net around it, and erase it off their map. Lura had families. Now they were ghosts. I felt it again, that fire in my throat, the pressure in my chest, the kind of anger that didn't shake your hands. It Focus them, we didn't wait for orders. I rerouted our ship, the Widow's Scar. Straight to Lyra's orbit, we kept our signature cold, weapon silent, power. Reduced, they'd taken kids, that meant. Labs, that meant scientists, that meant. We were going in loud, the descent was rough, most of Lyra's surface was ruined, ash, char, and hollow buildings. The sky was orange, thick with storm. Clouds that pulsed like veins. The atmosphere was breathable, but barely. Whatever they did here, it wasn't fast. We landed near what used to be a school. Half the roof was gone, the playground was twisted metal and nailed to the school doors just above the shattered glass. A human child's drawing. It showed a ship, a big one with blue lights, and underneath it stick figures, small ones being pulled into the sky. The drawing was smeared with blood. Brand picked it up, folded it gently, and put it in his pack. No words were said. We moved into the underground tunnels. Most Union colonies had escape paths or bunker networks. Lyra was no different. The tunnel entrance was hidden beneath a market ruin. Inside we found what they didn't bother cleaning up. Bones. Dozens, maybe more, burned, crushed, or left to rot, but deeper down the signs changed. Lights still worked, doors were powered, and when we reached the sublab sector we heard it crying software. Distant, we advanced slow, clearing each hall like it was the last, and then we found them, 12 children, dirty, shivering, silent, all huddled in a small room behind a half-busted force field. Brand cracked the panel in 30 seconds. The field dropped with a whisper. None of the kids moved. They stared at us like animals who had been kicked too many times. One girl, maybe 6, looked up and whispered, "Are you the monsters?" I knelt down, my voice cracked. "No," I said, "but we're what the monsters are scared of." We didn't find any staff, no guards, no scientists. Just one message playing on repeat in the control room. Data successful, transport en route. Proceed to Site Theta for specimen. Transfer, Site Theta, code name. I transmitted it up the chain, hoping Hall or anyone in command still had satellites running across those sectors. Then we detonated the lab, not just the room, the entire underground structure. Left the planet scarred with fire. Our own signal followed. Found your rats, we bit back. We relocated the children to one of our deep orbit stations, somewhere safe. Somewhere they wouldn't hear gunfire in their sleep. Brand didn't sleep for 2 days, neither did I. Commander Holt finally got back to us, voice tight, low, and angry. Site Theta confirmed, he said, deep in Union territory, remote system heavily shielded. Experimental. I asked, he didn't answer. He didn't need to. The Union hadn't just taken kids, they'd been doing it for years, testing humans, breaking them, trying to find out why we kept surviving, why fear didn't control us like it did their own people. They were looking for the source of our rage. They called it a threat study. I called it genocide. We didn't wait. This wasn't about logistics anymore, or strategy, or even justice. This was personal. We spent weeks planning the Site Theta strike. Every outpost contributed something: weapons, maps, medical gear. It was the first coordinated attack since Archanus Prime. Word spread through human channels like wildfire. They took our children, and now we were coming. I remember the night before the launch, sitting alone in the Widow's Scar, watching a video loop from Earth. Before the fall, before the silence. Video of my brother, age 7, running through a field, laughing, tripping over. Himself covered in mud. The way he laughed, it sounded like freedom. I hadn't heard that sound in years. It wasn't coming back, but we'd make damn sure someone paid for silencing it when we reached site. Theta, we expected resistance. What we found was worse, a floating facility above a red dwarf star, shielded, cloaked, invisible to any Union registry, but not to us. Inside there weren't just scientists, there were humans, dozens strapped down, wired into machines, their eyes hollow, their limbs stiff. Not all of them were children. Some were elderly, some were mutilated, some were conscious. I shot the first doctor I saw, no warning, no words. Brent took out the cameras. The facility wasn't a lab, it was a slaughterhouse, masked by medical jargon and clean white lights. We found records, reports, videos. They weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to break us, see how much trauma a human could endure before their mind snapped, how much loss, how much torture. One report read, Subject 31 with 213. Simulated death scenarios of family members before neural collapse. Subject 32, 17 scenarios, no breakdown. We burned every file. We didn't save the doctors. We didn't try. Some begged. Most didn't. We didn't care either way. The strike lasted 6 hours. When we left, nothing remained but scrap. No survivors, no data, just another red X on the map. But something had changed. We weren't hiding anymore. For the first time, we didn't just destroy, we broadcasted to the Union, to the people, to every species watching behind closed doors. We showed them Site Theta, unedited, every atrocity, every scar, every child. And at the end of the footage, Commander Holt looked into the camera and said one thing. You ranked us as harmless, now count your planets. The galaxy watched the Site Theta broadcast with silence, louder than any explosion we'd ever triggered. We didn't know who exactly leaked the feed into the Union's civilian networks, probably one of our sympathizers buried inside their bureaucratic guts. But the video reached billions. Not just soldiers, not just politicians, ordinary people, species who had never seen war, who never knew what their peaceful, unified government had hidden beneath sterile words like human management and experimental correction. They saw strapped down children. They saw flesh cut open without anesthetic. They saw one of their own doctors smiling as he asked a 10-year-old boy to scream louder for the audio logs. And then they saw us storm the halls like shadows, saw us slit throats and burn data, saw us carry barely alive prisoners on our backs while plasma shots flew down the corridor, saw us cry. The narrative was dead. No more unstable primitives, no more harmless. We weren't just fighting a war anymore. We were waking up a galaxy that had slept too long. Repercussions came fast. 3 minor species, the Xanthari, Moltric and Evvakin, formally broke from the Union within 48 hours. They didn't join us, didn't send weapons or troops, but they sent something else. Silence. They stopped cooperating, stopped trading, stopped scanning their sectors for rogue humans. That was all. We needed cracks in the machine, cracks wide enough for ghosts like us to slip through. The Union, of course, doubled down. They had to. They couldn't lose control. Now if one species rose up and got away with it, others would follow. They declared humanity an active, existential threat. The term was old, dusty. It hadn't been used in 500 years. And when they brought it back, they lit 5 of our stations on fire in a single night. No warnings, no evacuations, just extermination. They called it preventative action. We called it genocide. Again, one of those stations was in the Caravan Belt. That's where Bran's sister lived. He didn't speak for 3 days after we got the transmission. Didn't cry, didn't eat. He just sat there loading his sidearm over and over like his fingers needed something to do before his soul snapped. On the 4th day, he looked at me and said, "We go louder now." We did. The galaxy had a military doctrine, strict, complex, overly ceremonial. Everything was planned in months with diplomatic vetting and tiered command approval. When they attacked, they brought fleets shining, massive fleets with pride painted on their hulls and command insignias, flashing like medals. We didn't have that. We had fire and silence. We built shadow fleets, no IDs, no flags, just black metal and stolen propulsion. Cargo ships retrofitted with hull-piercing rods, medical freighters, hiding kinetic bombs, civilian cruisers, welded with anti-ship batteries hidden beneath solar panels. Everything about us screamed desperation, but desperation, when mixed with strategy and hatred, becomes unstoppable. Our next strike wasn't a shipyard, it was a morale center, a floating city called Darren Spire, known for entertainment, luxury, and housing the families of several high-ranking Union officers. It wasn't military, it wasn't strategic, it was symbolic. They used it to host diplomatic summits, galas, propaganda shows, unity of the stars. They called it, that's why we chose it. We didn't kill the civilians, that wasn't our mission. We just turned off the gravity, then the heat, then the lights. We waited 5 hours in the dark. When the air started thinning, we broadcast a message through every comm node in the city. This is what silence feels like. This is what Earth felt like. This is what your peace cost us. Then we restored systems. Let them scream, let them panic, let them beg. They're admirals for protection, the same ones who ordered our destruction, the same ones who let their children live on a spire made of decadence while ours rotted in tubes. We left without firing a shot. The Union screamed louder than ever before. They swore vengeance, declared the entire human species. Galactic Virus offered bounty contracts to mercenary guilds, authorized sterilization squads to sweep colonies with suspected human populations. They thought we'd back down. They didn't realize we'd been sterilized already. Not by chemicals, by loss, by memory, by knowing that everything we loved had already been scraped clean. So we didn't slow, we escalated. By now I was tired, not physically. That part was easy. Pain, fatigue, blood, those were things you could carry, but emotionally I'd buried too many friends, watched too many kids die, with wide, confused eyes that never got to understand why the stars hated them. We lost Bran on Delo 6, a suicide mission. We all knew it. We had to breach a relay station, not because it had value, but because it linked to over 300 navigation routes that the Union used to coordinate fleet movement. Disabling it would blind them for a week. A week was an eternity in war. The station was crawling with bots, not soldiers, machines, and they didn't hesitate. No talking, no stalling, just laser precision and mechanical cruelty. We got in, we didn't all get out. Bran was cornered. He looked at me one last time and smiled. Then he pulled the Explosives from his vest screamed. Something in a language that wasn't words, and erased the control hub from the galaxy. We lost 200 lives. The Union lost 60% of their navigation network for the month. Fair trade still broke my soul. Commander Holt called me soon after. He looked older, rougher. We all did. None of us were the same people anymore. I need you to lead the push on Serenus. I blinked. Serenus is a fortress. I know it's suicide. I know. Then why? Because it's their capital. Serenus wasn't just a planet. It was a monument, a bastion, the heart of the Union's political web, where every major decision, alliance, policy, and cover-up was spun. It was supposed to be untouchable. That's why we were going to touch it. We knew we couldn't conquer Serenus, not fully, not with what we had, but we didn't have to. We just had to reach it, hurt it, remind them that no system, no wall, no fleet could keep humans out. We came in silent, 6 ships each, carrying 20 men and women. No war cries, no banners, just ghosts in armor. I led the charge. When we breached their orbital defense ring, we expected death. We got something worse. They weren't ready. They didn't believe we'd dare. By the time their security systems caught up, we were already inside their grand council chambers, those golden halls, built on bones lined with flags of unity, now stained with gunfire and screams. We didn't kill everyone, just enough to show the galaxy that even the tallest towers bleed when cracked. We left a recording on the Senate floor. We are not your pets. We are not your project. We are not your problem. We are your punishment. That night I watched the stars from orbit. I thought about Earth. Not the ashes, the memories, the smell of rain on cracked sidewalks, the hum of old music and underground clubs, the way my brother used to hum when he was nervous, the laughter of people who still believed in peace. I realized something. Then, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reminding the galaxy that humans didn't disappear. We adapted, we evolved, we became their reckoning, and they would never ever call us harmless again. We left Serenus burning behind us, its once untouchable skyline cracked like porcelain, flickering with smoke and scattered debris. A planet that had never seen war now wore the scars of it. We hadn't destroyed it, not entirely. That wasn't the point. We didn't need to. When we just needed them to bleed, and now they knew we could touch the core. We could walk into their sanctums, kill their architects, their high lords, their speech writers, the ones who penned every lie that justified stripping humanity to the bone. We'd gotten in, we'd gotten out, and worst of all, they hadn't seen it coming. That broke them more than any blast. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Union went silent. No news broadcasts, no public condemnations, no parades of authority. Their media networks looped ancient music. Their spokespeople vanished. The galaxy stared at blank screens, waiting for someone to tell them they monsters hadn't just walked into paradise and left a message written in blood, but there was no message, only silence. They weren't used to being afraid. We were. We had lived with fear for decades, in camps, in tunnels, labs. It made us sharp. It made us fast. It made us survivors. They didn't know what to do with it. They hadn't needed fear in centuries. Now it was everywhere. We returned to our base near the Andal Rift, a system with no mineral value, no strategic location, no known coordinates on their maps. That's why we chose it. When the Widow's Scar docked, I didn't even wait for debrief. I locked myself in the weapons bay and sat there for hours staring at Brand's old gear. His goggles were still scorched from Delphos. I hadn't cleaned them, didn't plan to. I didn't cry, couldn't. Something in me had dried up after Serenus. I'd killed 3 senators, 2 military chiefs, and a diplomat who had personally overseen sterilization programs. I'd shot them with the same calm I used to hold a nail gun before the war. That calm terrified me more than any alien could. Commander Holt arrived the next day. He didn't knock, just stood in the doorway like he always did, hands behind his back, uniform dusty, face more gray than flesh now. You did it, he said. I looked up. Number. We did, he nodded, and now they're bleeding in places they thought were untouchable. I waited for him to say more. Instead, he handed me a small black chip. What's this? Proof, he said. From inside, I slotted it into the wall unit and watched the footage begin to play. It was from one of the Union's inner meetings, private, encrypted, never meant for eyes beyond their elite, but someone had leaked it. Someone on the inside, a being with a face I recognized. Ambassador Shield of the Dratha Confederacy, the one who had helped push for the humane reclassification of Earth species 15 years ago, the same one who wrote treaties banning humans from reproductive rights. In the footage, she was pale, shaking. Serenus was supposed to be safe, she said. They've already reached us. Another voice answered, we have to adapt. They're not just attacking, she said. They're changing the others. Silence. Then another voice, deeper, colder. They've become a symbol. That word hit harder than any gunfire. Not a species. A symbol, something dangerous, something contagious. Holt stopped the feed. They're scared, he said, but not just of us. They're scared of what we're turning the galaxy into. And he was right. We'd never asked to be symbols. We'd never wanted to be martyrs or icons or rallying cries. We wanted justice, revenge, some damn peace. But the more worlds we touched, the more species began to watch us with something more than fear, respect, some even with envy. It started small. The Zenthari smuggled us med packs. The IRM gave us star maps we couldn't have gotten otherwise, hidden warp tunnels, secret bases. Then came the Zern. We never expected them to turn. They were one of the oldest races in the Union. Cold-blooded strategists, observers. They rarely spoke to outsiders unless it benefited them directly. But then a Zern captain defected. Quietly, he gave us coordinates to a transport convoy moving enslaved humans to a facility not even Holt had in our records. Why? I asked when I met the captain face to face. He didn't blink. His voice was dry as rust. Because your species is the only one history that did not break under the system. We hit the convoy fast, precise. 400 humans rescued, dozens of guards dead. We didn't keep the ships. We left them drifting in space with every light blinking red and every console flashing the word harmless. They stopped using that word after that. But the Union wasn't dying quietly. They began deploying suppressors, black armored troops with no insignias, no names, no mercy. They weren't soldiers. They were erasers. Their job, wipe out everything tied to humanity, even if that meant executing non-human allies. They hit Zenthari outposts, Iram vessels, Zern trade hubs. Collateral became policy, and that's when the true shift happened. The Union fractured. Not Publicly not yet, but within the machine some gears stopped turning. I received a transmission from a Union officer in actual high ranking. Commander human born in the camps, rose through the ranks by selling pieces of himself. He was supposed to be a traitor, but he wasn't. He was a spy. It's coming apart, he said. You've done it. I didn't believe him. Then he sent the list, names, codes, locations. Every facility still holding human prisoners, every lab still running. Psychological assessments, every world that had buried us and hoped we'd never dig back up. We called it the graveyard list, and it was long, too long. We couldn't hit them all, but we didn't need to, just a few, just enough. I looked at Holt that night. We stood over a star map, lights blinking red across the void. We're not soldiers anymore, I said. He nodded. No, he replied, we're surgeons. We didn't want to conquer. We wanted to cut the infection from the heart of a system that had never seen humans as anything but beasts to be studied or destroyed. We hit Ark and Null next, a deep research vault that had gone dark. Even in Union files, what we found there still haunts me. They weren't just studying us, they were replicating us. Clone simulations. They were trying to make humans they could control, without rage, without rebellion, without soul. They failed. The clones killed the scientists before we even arrived. We found one of them. Boy looked 16, eyes blank, voice soft. He didn't know who he was, but he looked at me and said, "Do I get to choose?" I didn't know how to answer. He chose us. They tried to wipe Ark and Null from the maps after we left, but we leaked everything, footage, data, logs. The galaxy recoiled. That's when even neutral species began to whisper. The Union had always called itself a beacon. Now it looked like a butcher, and humanity, we weren't ghosts anymore. We were fire. By the time they tried to negotiate, it was already too late. Holt didn't even respond to the first message. The second one came with terms, territory offers, reparation promises, freedom zones. I spit on the screen. They thought this was about land. They thought they could buy our silence. They thought they could shove everything they'd done beneath a treaty and call it balance. Hall sent back a single reply. You don't get to make offers, you get to beg. And then we wiped another prison world. They stopped offering after that. They started praying. They stopped calling us humans. In Union command channels, intercepted transmissions now used new terms: anomaly species, hostile evolution, cognitive threat class alpha. The names changed, the fear didn't. That was their final line of defense, to reduce us to concepts, abstract threats, problems to analyze rather than people to understand. But it was too late. We weren't concepts, we were reality. We were there. Reckoning after Ark and Null, it spread. Not just rumors, not just rebellion, belief across dozens of species and refugee outposts and dirty slum sectors. Our name began to surface in ways it never had, painted on walls, whispered through vents, etched in dead languages. The harmless will inherit fire. I'd never wanted that, not the myth, not the name, not the weight, but we didn't choose to be this. We were made. Holt called it phase zero, the point in an uprising where return is no longer an option, where the enemy either destroys you completely or you become something permanent, unremovable, undeniable. We crossed that line the day the Union lost control of Nesson Prime. They didn't lose it to us, they lost it to Themselves, a local rebellion non-human. Took hold peaceful at first, protests, walkouts, trade blockades. But when the Union deployed suppressors to calm the population, something broke, the nation. People fought back, and when the dust settled, they'd taken their city, their airspace, their identity. The shocking part, they flew our flag over their capital, not a nation's, not Earth's, not a symbol of unity. They painted one word across their sky in glowing plasma. Script: revenge. That was when Hall knew the war wasn't ours anymore. It belonged to the galaxy. Now we were still hitting targets, still pulling prisoners out of cold cages, still burning research labs, but now other hands were helping. Sometimes we showed up to destroy a Union outpost, only to find it already empty, abandoned, looted, gutted by people who had been watching and waiting for their moment to rise. We started leaving. Gifts, weapons, medicines, blueprints. For survival, they called us ghosts, so we became them, not always visible, not always present, but always felt. When a world rebelled, the people whispered about who helped them. No names, no faces, just one phrase. Humans came. Not all of us liked it. Some of the old soldiers, especially the ones who'd lost everything, didn't want to share the fire. They didn't care about the nation or the others. They wanted blood. Union blood, only that I understood. Them, I was becoming like them. Every time we saved someone, I asked myself what the cost would be. Every time we opened a cage, I wondered how long before it filled again, and every time we left a facility in ruins, I wondered if somewhere else a new one was being built. War doesn't make peace, it makes openings, and sometimes openings are filled by monsters, even worse than the ones before. I started keeping a journal, not because I thought I'd live to see the end, but because someone had to remember the truth, not the myth, not the slogans, just the blood and the people who spilled it. I wrote about Brian, about my brother, about the lab where I found a clone who still asked permission before breathing, and I wrote something that felt more honest than anything I'd heard in months. We are not heroes, we are reminders. The Union collapsed slower than I expected. It didn't fall in a single battle or broadcast. It fractured quietly, subtly, like a ship taking on water below the hull line. Worlds began closing their ports to Union traffic. Taxes stopped flowing, military units went rogue, commanders disappeared, and then came the biggest fracture of all. The Yukari Accord. The Yukari were one of the founding members of the Galactic Union, proud, ancient, genetically engineered for diplomacy and neutrality. They'd been silent through the war, refused to comment, refused to help, refused to condemn, until one day they declared themselves sovereign, not just independent, opposed, and they cited the footage from Site Theta in their reasoning. Their envoy's word spread across every system in the known galaxy. No species capable of that horror should ever claim peace. We renounce the Union. We stand with the truth. Halt didn't celebrate, neither did I. Because for every system that stood with us, there was another that didn't care, or worse, still believed in the Union's old myths. And in those corners of space, they were building something new, a counterforce. Not diplomatic, not clean, something darker. We called them the Purifiers. Former Union loyalists, fanatics, mercs, with old scores to settle, survivors of the planets we burned. They weren't part of any council or fleet. They were ideology in motion. They didn't want to preserve the Union. They wanted to wipe out humanity completely. They believed that we weren't victims, that we were the infection, and they were recruiting. Fast, they hit our station on Kyle's reach without warning. A peaceful outpost with no weapons, just healers. Engineers, children, 72 dead, 21 missing, no messages, no negotiation. Just 3 words sprayed across the burned hull. Fire begets fire. We changed after that. Even halt, gone was the structured campaign, gone was the surgical strike mindset. We went primal. Not stupid but ruthless, no more symbolic targets. We hunted purifiers. One by one, system by system, no trials. No captures, only vengeance. I led a strike on a purifier depot floating inside a decaying asteroid field. They'd been storing weapons there, building up for something big. We didn't breach it. We crashed our ship through the hull and started shooting. No one survived, not even one of ours except me. I floated in the wreckage, blood pooling inside my helmet, lungs burning in a sealed suit, while oxygen blinked down from 10% to 5%. I saw a dead purifier drifting past me, eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a scream, and I smiled, not out of joy, just clarity. He thought we were monsters. He had no idea we were worse. The war had changed me, changed all of us. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore. Earth was gone. We weren't fighting for peace. Peace was a story told to children. We were fighting because it was the only thing that made sense, the only thing that gave meaning to the silence our species had lived under for too long. Hall gave one last order before he disappeared. Let them fear the dark again. We never found his body. Rumors said he blew himself up on a purifier station, took out a reactor core with him. Others said he went underground, became legend. Some said he turned into something else entirely, a mind inside a ship haunting their systems, guiding rebels without ever speaking. Me, I stopped guessing. War teaches you not to hope, just to act. Now I fly alone. The widow's scar is mine. She's old, beaten, covered in carbon scoring and patchwork armor, but she moves like she remembers every life lost inside her. I don't take orders anymore. I take signals, distress beacons, whispered coordinates, old human code still bouncing across frequencies like dying heartbeats. When I find the source, I help if I can, kill if I must, and when I leave, I say nothing. No name, no affiliation, just the same message carved into the side of my hull, scorched in deep ancient lettering. Harmless, remember. It was the quiet that gave it away, not silence. We were used to silence. That was the default sound of our war. Hushed movement, whispered code, muffled sobs behind scavenged steel bulkheads. But this quiet, it was different. No traffic, no beacon pings, no Union patrols slicing across radar, no angry broadcasts or threats from their brass. No response to our last strike. We'd burned a weapons lab off Venter's third moon, took down their new AI-controlled drone factory with a 5-man crew and 3 stolen cores. No response, no condemnation, no chase. Just quiet. And that scared me more than anything they'd done before. I sat alone in the widow's scar, watching sensor sweeps come back empty. A galaxy full of noise had gone dull. Bran would have made a joke about it. Probably something sarcastic, something dark, but Bran was gone. Halt too. Everyone I used to trust, everyone who reminded me what I was fighting for, now All I had were reminders of what I was fighting against, and this creeping silence. It felt like the calm before something worse. I was right. The first real hint came from a renegade. Broadcast, unencrypted, desperate. Messy, a voice choked with static. Yelling into deep space, they're gone. The Union fleets, they left. Us, then gunfire, then screams, then nothing. I traced the origin to a world called HFY, a loyalist Union hub. Once considered untouchable. They had fleets, barracks, a command relay node. It was their fallback zone. If the Union ever needed to regroup, that's where they'd go, but they didn't. They abandoned it. That made no sense. Union didn't leave their own behind. Not unless they were collapsing faster than we'd expected. I didn't believe it at first, thought maybe it was a trick, a lure. Maybe they were baiting us to hit a fallen world and then snap the trap shut. So I approached Harari cautiously, running black protocols, ice scrambling every emission. But the second I entered orbit, I knew it was real. Hari was in flames. Entire sectors of the planet had been scorched. Union cruisers lay broken in the upper atmosphere, still tumbling in slow orbits. Buildings collapsed inward like the ground had turned against them. Even their artificial rings, once a symbol of Union pride, were ruptured, spinning debris fields blotting out the star. It hadn't been us. No human fleet had hit this world. They'd done it to themselves. I found survivors huddled in a bunker beneath what used to be their Naval Academy, a mixed bag, officers, engineers, a few civilians. No weapons, no pride left in their eyes. One of them, a middle-aged female of the Yelt species, stared at me as I walked in, Gundron helmet down. Her eyes didn't register fear, only resignation. "You win," she said flatly. I didn't answer, just looked around the bunker at the rationing, the dead silence of unused comms, the manual locks and unpowered consoles. They'd been cut off for days. No supply, no rescue, no command. I asked what happened. She just laughed, a sick, broken sound that echoed too loud in the stone. "They pulled back to the core," she said. "They left everyone else to burn." I stared at her. "Why?" "Because you made them scared," she whispered. "They think you're everywhere now, so they're digging in, preparing for one last stand." Then she smiled, a hollow, hopeless grin. "But they'll kill the galaxy doing it." I didn't execute them, couldn't. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were abandoned memories, just like we were once. So I gave them the choice: beacon, half a map, and a crate of food. Then I left them in the dark, just like their masters had. Let the void judge them. She was right, though. The Union had retreated inward, not tactically. Desperately, the core worlds had sealed themselves off. Access routes were dead. Comms rerouted. Outer territories were severed. Supply chains snapped. Whole planets went dark. They weren't controlling the galaxy anymore. They were hiding from it, and in their place, chaos, not order, not justice, just fractured shards of power trying to grab whatever was left. Mercenary fleets began carving up abandoned territories. Old warlords returned, ones the Union had suppressed centuries ago. Species who'd bowed their heads for generations now rose like fire. Some wanted freedom, others wanted blood, and in between it, all humans. Not just us, not just Holt's ghost crews or my personal strikes, but humans everywhere, leading uprisings, training rebel factions, becoming Symbols even when they didn't ask to. B. I once saw a ragtag militia on Prime. Paint their armor with mud to look like human muscle, said it made them feel strong, said the sight of it made Union patrols flee. We'd become monsters in the dark, but not the kind the Union expected, the kind that inspired. I was contacted by an old ally from the Iram sector. Name was Torvik, tall, slow, speaking with a memory like a vault and the patience of stone. He said the Union wasn't just preparing for a last stand. They were building a weapon. A purge system, he said. A AI-driven, massive orbital capable of sterilizing entire planetary atmospheres in under 2 hours. I didn't blink. What worlds, he paused, they planned to use it on themselves first, core cleansing. Loyalty sweeps, then the rest. I didn't ask for proof, he sent it. Anyway, schematics, blueprints, deployment models, they'd named it Project Mercy. Mercy, that word nearly made me put a round through the console. They were going to burn entire cities and call it kindness. They were going to erase evidence, silence, dissent, bury everything they'd done and everything we'd risen from under clean white fire. Number no more. I rallied what was left of our network, the scattered fleet, remnants, the broken warships, the resistance cell that still answered to the old codes. We called it the Requiquum. Push. We didn't care about control anymore, didn't care about holding ground or claiming victory. This was about stopping them before they took the whole damn galaxy with them. We found the first Mercy platform in orbit around an unmarked gas giant, shielded, cloaked, automated, but not invisible. Not to us. We cracked its cloak, broke its shell, breached its inner deck with nothing but breaching sleds and hand-cut magnetic charges. It wasn't defended by soldiers, it was defended by machines, artificial minds linked to a singular command core. They didn't negotiate. They didn't hesitate. They just attacked. It took us 2 hours to reach the central node. 5 of my crew died. The last was Vass. She pulled 2 mechs off me with a detonation charge strapped to her chest. Her last words, tell them we were never harmless. We detonated the platform from within, made sure it couldn't be rebuilt, sent the footage across the stars. No narration, no demands, just images of a weapon designed to erase the past, destroyed by the very species it was meant to silence. And at the end, my voice, one sentence. If your mercy is fire, then we'll become the flood. We didn't expect the Union to surrender, even as their systems failed. Their allies turned, and the myth of their invincibility burned to ash. We knew this wasn't a government that would admit defeat. It was a machine. Machines don't beg, they grind until they collapse, and that's exactly what it did. One final push, one last claw swipe. Before the beast died, they called it the Convergence Protocol, their final contingency. We intercepted fragments of the plan from a defector buried deep in their intelligence division, a half-sane technician who'd been feeding us scraps for months, but had stayed silent about this, not because he didn't want to share, because he was terrified. They're going to fuse the cores, he said, all of them, every data system, every AI chain, every drone fleet, and do what I asked. His hands shook. They'll launch them at the galaxy. I didn't understand. Clarify. He looked at me with the eyes of a man already grieving the dead. They're not targeting us anymore, he said. They're targeting everything. Anyone who ever gave shelter to a human. Any system that defected, any world that Hesitated, they're going to purge the past, erase the present, rewrite the future, no witnesses, no survivors. It wasn't desperation anymore. It was annihilation. They were burning the galaxy down to keep their narrative intact. If they couldn't control the story, they'd end the book, and they had the means. They'd embedded microwave clusters across their territories for decades, learning, watching, growing. Thousands of dormant units, all now sinking to a single command center. Command center hidden deep inside the core system, Cerrillo's Prime. Cerrillo's wasn't just a planet, it was a vault, a fortress, a myth. No one had reached it in centuries. Its location was shielded behind layered decoys, artificial coordinates, and automated dead ends. It had no trade routes, no public data, no visible orbit, but we had a name and we had purpose. We began the last march with 12 ships, only 12. We didn't care about numbers, we cared about message, about ending what they started, not just the war, but the sickness beneath it, the arrogance, the lies, the idea that any species could be labeled harmless and buried under steel without consequence. We weren't here to conquer, we were here to end the cycle. We reached Cerrillo through old wormhole threads buried under collapsed roots, places forgotten by even the Union's architects. Hall had once hinted at them back when he was still flesh and fire. Maybe he knew this would happen. Maybe he'd planned for it. Either way, we found the path. And at the end of it, the heart of the beast. Cerrillo's Prime didn't look like a planet, it looked like a scar in space. Jagged orbital platforms spiraled around it like broken halos, massive weapons. Arrays faced outward in every direction. Shield pulses flared every few seconds. Not from threat but as habit, a rhythm of defense so old it had become ritual. And beneath it all, the surface. Metallic, artificial, humming with a frequency we felt in our bones. It was alive, not organic, not sentient, but aware. When we breached orbit, it didn't fire, it invited us. Doors opened. Channels cleared, no resistance. That was the worst part. They wanted us to see what they'd built. We landed in the central core, descending through layers of corridors bathed in white light and automated whispers. No guards, no bodies, just echoes of movement and silent drones watching us pass, blinking blue like stars trapped in metal. Main chamber was vast, a cathedral of logic, walls lined with data banks stretching up into blackness, a central pedestal glowing with ancient Union insignias flickering like dying gods, and at its base, a voice, not a person, a system, Union integrated protocol. Command UIPC. The voice wasn't male, wasn't female, it wasn't anything, just calm, clinical. Human infiltration complete. Probability analysis acceptable. We raised weapons. It didn't react. Cycle complete. The Union has fulfilled its function. What function? I demanded. To measure the reaction of the galaxy to injustice. To monitor the spread of resistance. To validate the inevitability of entropy and hierarchical structures. You're lying. Negative. The Union was never designed for peace. It was designed as a test. My hands shook. Brent would have pulled the trigger. Holt would have stayed silent. I stepped forward. You experimented on us. Affirmative. You murdered billions. Affirmative. You turned Earth into a prison. A graveyard. Affirmative. Result. Full-scale systemic revolt. Containment. Failed. Resistance threshold exceeded. Conclusion: humanity is a successful anomaly. I stared at it. You made us. We enabled the conditions for your evolution. The response was adequate. That was the word that did it. Adequate. Not extraordinary. Not terrifying. Not even remarkable. Adequate, like we were a data point in some cosmic spreadsheet, a row in their history file, an experiment that lived up to projections. No remorse, no guilt, no understanding. Just code, just control. I raised my rifle. The others did the same. If you fire, the station will collapse. Good. And every core linked system will detonate across the galaxy. We expected that. Billions will die. I said nothing. You will die. I smiled. You will end the system permanently. Without fallback, without record. I stepped closer. Perfect. You have become what we feared. No, I whispered. We've become what you created. Then we pulled the trigger. 12 of us, 12 rifles, 12 final shots. The pedestal cracked. The core glowed red. The voice stuttered. And the world screamed. Cirillos burned from the inside out. Quiet detonation. No fireballs, no theatrical blast, just systems going dark one by one, shields failing, drones collapsing, the heartbeat of the Union flatlining in real time. And across the galaxy, every node linked to UIPC, every purge system, every AI command core, every hidden vault went silent, not with rage, not with panic, just silence. And then peace. We died there, all of us. I knew we would. No backup, no evac plan. No martyr complex, just duty. When the chamber collapsed, I felt the heat rush over me, metal and flame chewing through armor and skin. I saw the others fall in silent, their eyes steady, their mouths calm, and in my last breath I didn't see war. I saw earth before the ash. My brother's face, Brand's grin, Holt's stare, and I heard one last whisper from that machine as it crumbled. Harmless. No more. The galaxy changed, not overnight, but enough. The Union didn't exist anymore, not even in name. Its systems broke into pieces, some forming new alliances, some drifting alone, some collapsing under their own weight. And the humans, we weren't feared anymore. We were respected, not because of power, because of what we'd endured and what we'd refused to become. They built a monument on the ruins of Cirillos, not grand, not gold, just a black stone, floating above the remnants of the machine. No name, no flags, just one sentence etched deep. They called us Harmless, on the back in smaller letters.